Hello, industry explorers. Welcome to our show. I'm so happy to have you guys here because we're going to talk about how to start a career and become a technical project manager. I have with me Alister, who is big in the TikTok community. That's where I found him. And I love that I get to say that, especially on LinkedIn when you've kind of got a lot of boomers on there still.
hmm
And I'm just like, yeah, guys, TikTok, that's where it's at. Come on.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
how are you doing today, Alister?
I'm doing wonderful. Doing wonderful. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon here in California. Happy to be with you. And I have to compliment you on your production quality here. This is
Thank you.
outstanding. Looking great.
Well,
Super
I have
great.
to compliment you on your choice of costume. Uh,
Yes, yes.
so,
Looks great.
so talk to us about the tech industry from a very broad scope. What is that industry about? What's involved?
Yeah, well, the tech industry is exciting for a few reasons. First of all, because you have a lot of interesting things happening. So the projects you get to work on tend to be really exciting. Um, and they tend to be cutting edge, working with new technology. And the other thing that's interesting about working in the tech industry is a lot of time you're dealing with funded companies. So an investor will come in and pour $500 million into a project or $30 million into a project, and as a result, you get to enjoy typically higher salaries, and work with really intelligent people. And so kind of those combinations of being able to work with interesting people on interesting projects and be higher paid for them is what brings a lot of great talent to the tech industry.
Yeah, I'm hearing interesting projects, high pay, talented, intelligent people. I'm hearing a conglomeration of like all the good things that you want when you seek out a career. So, what were some of the projects that you worked on? What were the types of projects and what were the goals of those projects?
Yeah. So when I got into the startup world, you know, it was kind of an easy transition for me because I had always kind of worked on my own businesses. In fact, when I got my first job, I after college, it was pretty much my first job ever because I had worked almost exclusively for myself, building my own businesses. And so the company that I worked for, they worked on like bringing a technician to your door the same way that you would order a pizza. So, you might order a technician or the same way you'd order like a DoorDash, and guy comes to your house and fixes your appliance or your cell phone. And I had an experience in that industry. And as a very young startup, they thought that my kind of diverse background in that industry would help me in that role. And it did. And in a small company, what's interesting is the roles aren't really defined. And so a lot of times in these startups, they will hire people and call them project managers. And they're kind of just like doers, people that they need things done, and they find somebody that they think has the tenacity or the organizational skills to kind of get things done. And that was kind of my first role at this startup. And what I realized quickly was that what I was doing was essentially project management. So my
Mhm.
boss would tell me, hey, this is what we need. And then here, run with it. And I would have to kind of pick it apart and make it into smaller pieces and figure out what kind of resources we need to get the job done, organize and communicate that whole thing to the team, and kind of keep the whole team organized. And at first, it was very rudimentary because I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew that, well, I got this goal here, I got this team here, I got these resources here. Let's make it happen. And I was kind of just like, making things happen. And then I eventually got a new boss basically who showed me some of the more interesting, like, well, not everybody finds it interesting, but some of the more formal project management steps. And that's when I kind of started to
Mhm.
realize the value of project management because
Mhm.
especially at the higher levels of management, the better your project management skills are, the more likely that you will be able to kind of move up in management. And so I started to
So
really just kind of
the startup that you were working for, you kind of compared it to DoorDash. So with
mhm,
DoorDash and those startups, you go on your phone, there's an app, you order food, and then someone who is not technically hired by DoorDash, they're a contractor, they go pick up the food for you. So it's like a
Mm-hmm.
relationship between DoorDash and the driver who picks up the food and the restaurant who makes the food and then the consumer.
Yeah.
So using like that analogy, you are talking about how you had your company and the user is calling up people who are need of or like is a customer someone who needs technical services, kind of like the what's the Best Buy thing, the
Geek
Geek
Squad.
Squad. Is it kind of like Geek Squad but turn it into DoorDash and Uber Eats
Yeah,
and all that?
pretty much. So you have
Fascinating.
you have like a two-sided marketplace essentially, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when people say like who your customers are, and at some point, in the past in business, that was always very clear. Your store, your customers are the ones that come into your store. But when you start facilitating transactions and you start acting as a
Mm-hmm.
middleman, then your customer ends up being more than one type of person, more than one type of customer. And in our case, we had our customers, which are our technicians on the platform, the ones that were providing the services, and then we
Mm.
had the customers who are the homeowners and the device owners that we would kind of connect them, and we would try to facilitate those transactions as much as possible.
So from the technician level, what were some of the problems they were going to solve?
Oh man, it was that was kind of what I first dived into. So on the technician level, we were always constantly trying to get people. The biggest thing was like, how do you get people to take jobs? Because the freedom of being able to come and go as much as you want. We never really had that stability of supply. Whenever customer would order something, we weren't always 100% sure if we're going to have a technician to fill that.
Uh,
So on
so
one
sorry,
hand,
bring it before we get to that level where you
yeah.
were at with your project management. Take it down one more level to like the actual technician or
Mhm.
even the consumer. Like what was the consumer calling and asking for?
Yeah, so our first service and the way that we got started was with cell phone repair, iPhone repair.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
I had
Gotcha.
actually started a couple businesses in iPhone repair also. And so that's why I was really familiar with iPhone repair and like smartphone repair and stuff like that. And that was like our main business.
Mm-hmm.
And so a customer would go on our website and they would say, okay, I want a technician to come to my house tomorrow at 2 p.m. And yeah, and then we would try to match a technician with that. And then they would go there and then, they would rate their technician, and then we have to keep track of the technician's jobs and how many they did and
Mm-hmm.
quality of the service and stuff like that.
So mostly cell phone repair. Would the technician or could consumers also order laptop repair?
Yeah, so we started off on cell phone repair, and I guess that's
Okay.
how a lot of times startups work. Well, they'll start off on a very like proof of concept type of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll expand their services as as the money comes in. So
Gotcha.
they'll secure more funding with the promise that they'll be able to increase their service offerings and stuff like that. But we quickly
So this
moved
is
into
the
handyman and like
oh,
appliances and stuff like that.
gotcha. So that's kind of the company and the industry that you are overseeing many moving parts with. So
Yeah.
now that we've got a grasp of what it was that the company was providing and what services the technicians were providing and what the customers were asking for, now I'm getting I'm getting a more vivid picture of what it is you're all involved in. So
Yeah.
from your level, from the technical project management level, what were some of your responsibilities? Because this is what I want to focus on now.
Okay. So I
What is
might
a technical project manager? We can start there.
all right. So so I'll preface this by saying that most of my time at this company was as a regular project manager, and only towards the end did I start to do a little bit more technical project management. And then when I moved to and then my next role after that was an actual technical project.
Hmm.
Okay. So, in fact, most of my time at Pulse, at the other company, I was doing more project management, operations management, and stuff. And then the very end, I'd say last
Hmm.
like 6 months is when I was doing technical project management. Okay, so I want to kind of draw the line. So, what I was doing a lot was like
Gotcha.
operations and project management, and in the end, I was more technical project management. But I'll talk about some technical what a technical project manager is and how a technical project manager fits into this picture. So,
Yeah.
a technical project manager is really just a project manager that handles technical projects. So, what they're doing is they're acting as a liaison often between the technical and non-technical teams. So you have like a product owner or someone that has a good vision for the project or the product, right? And then you have the technical team who is really good at building technical products and developing software. But what you don't have is someone to help execute them. You have someone with a vision. Let's say you're Steve Jobs, and you have the developers, and then you need someone to kind of handle the execution between all those things. So in this Steve Jobs example, Steve Jobs would come to me and he would say, hey, we want to build an iPhone, and it should be able to do this, this, and this, and customers are going to love these features here. And then as a technical project manager, I would kind of speak to the technical team, understand the technical requirements, how long something like that would take, whether those things are even possible to do, what kind of resources we would need, with the timelines and all those kind of things, and then manage the project and kind of coordinate the project from end to end.
Wow. Okay. So there's definitely a lot of moving parts. And it's so interesting that, even though it was in the last 6 months that you were with this company, I still think that's such an interesting role to have. And I love that you also transitioned from a project manager who is more based on the operations, and then you moved into technical project management. So I think, there's obviously very much a journey. And I think I want to have you on my podcast so that we can really focus on your personal journey. But for today, let's just focus on the role of technical project management. And I actually want to ask, what are some of the essential skills? Actually, let's start here. What is a college degree needed? Is it like, if you don't have a college degree, there's no way you're ever going to land this role? Or is there a little more leeway with this type of role? What do you recommend?
So for this particular role, a college degree actually does help quite a bit. This isn't like a coding role where you just need to prove your skills. In project management and technical project management, there's a lot of what's it called, like people skills and a lot of soft skills needed. And that's why it can be easy to break into project management. But at the same time, you have to understand that a lot of the people that you're competing with have degrees. And is it needed? I would say nothing's ever a hard rule, okay? But it's going to help when recruiters are looking at 30 different applicants and one simply doesn't have a college degree. It might be an easy factor to filter it out.
I want to latch on to something that you said. You said that when it comes to the college degree, it's not like with a technical project management role, it's not like you are going to prove your skill set. It's not like only a technical skill set where you prove that you know how to code and you code like the wind. All right.
Exactly.
I can't even think of anything clever to
code like the wind. Wow. I like that.
We're going to put it on a t-shirt, and we should put that on a t-shirt, because I always say, put that on a t-shirt in like every episode that I do. But anyway, but technical project management, there are just as you need the soft skill set as much as you need a technical hard skill set. So that's why it certainly helps to have a college degree. Now, I think I'm going to tell you what I think your answer is going to be to my next question. Okay. My next question is, what college degree, like what major do you recommend students pursue if they want to, become a technical project manager? And I think your answer is going to be, well, it depends, or it kind of doesn't matter, kind of does, kind of doesn't, computer science, but you could also get a business degree. But now I want to hear your answer, because you're the expert here.
That's pretty much it. So a lot of times it comes down to helping a recruiter make that check, like check the box, degree check, And so I think for project managers in particular, and then technical project managers, it can really be any degree. I think communications, I think business, I think even like, accounting, or like my degree I have an economics degree and then a master's in business. But any of the more kind of generic degrees would probably be fine. They're not gonna ever like ask to see your college degree, and You know what I'm saying? And you're probably
Yeah.
not going to end up using it, but it might help you, at least just make it past the screening phase.
I think it's kind of funny because I notice students really stress about what they should major in.
Yeah.
Like if they don't pick the exact correct major, possibly double major, they're not going to be successful. Like
Yes.
I notice students put a lot of stress on themselves when it comes to that. And then there's people like us where we've been out there. We've been into the thick of it, if you will. And but we know that really what you get out of college is what you put into it. And it ultimately usually doesn't matter what degree you get. People just want to check that box.
Yeah.
And the boxes can be it can be kind of generic. Like if you look at job postings and it's asking for the qualifications, what is required, often it'll say a 4-year degree is required. We
Yeah.
prefer it to be in X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
but you can major in ABC.
Yeah.
And it's just one box to check for the recruiter to check off. There are more boxes that they need to check
Mm-hmm.
off. And I know that students also really stress about having 3 to 5 years of experience. How do you
Yeah.
get that experience if someone doesn't hire you? Well, how does someone hire you if you don't get 3 to 5 years of experience? So my
Yeah.
next question for you is to become a technical project manager, how do you work your way up there? How do
Yeah.
you get that? What's a good entry level position where you enter and then you get your 3 to 5 years of experience and you eventually work your way up to technical project manager? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think there's two main career paths that you see most often in the technical project manager space. One is previous computer science, excuse me, software engineers, right?
Okay.
So the previous software engineers, and the other ones are previous project managers. So software
Mhm.
engineers make really great technical project managers because they have the technical background. They're familiar with the workflow, because we typically use a framework called Agile methodology, which is kind of very popular in the tech field. So they're familiar with the methodologies. They're familiar with the different roles. They've had to work with technical project managers before. Like I said, they have the high standards for the technical side of it. And so if they beef up their project management skills a little bit, then they can easily make that transition into technical project manager. In fact, a lot of them are kind of like, don't like coding, and so that's like a good transition for them. On the other
Gotcha.
side, if you were a project manager like I was, right, I started as less of a technical project management. I learned tech skills on my own, and then I got a job working as a contractor at Facebook as a technical project manager. So having solid project management fundamentals and then learning a little bit of a technical background is going to get you into the technical project management space.
What I'm hearing is I should do a live stream about how to become a software developer, since that is one of the basics, one of the career paths that you could take
Yeah.
in order to eventually become a technical project manager, and use your career path before you were doing operations project management. What was your role before that? What were like the 2 or 3 roles before that?
So let's see. Let's see. When I was in college, I started a company, an iPhone repair company. So I started off by like repairing iPhones on the street and coffee shops and stuff like that. And then I
Yeah.
eventually opened up a store and opened up another store and hired people. And then I decided I didn't want to like stay in that business. And so just because I felt like there was like a cap to how much money I could make and how much time I had to stay with there. And I wanted to be able to get out and explore the world. And so I sold that company to my manager, and I moved to Brazil I didn't move to Brazil. I went to Brazil for a couple of weeks. Well, it was supposed to be a few weeks. And then I kind of almost on accident started the same type of business there, except there it was like no storefront. We had a website. People would go online and book their appointment, and then we sent a technician to them. We kind of expanded in a few different cities in Brazil. I met a girl who is now my wife, and
Love
yeah.
that.
And so, by the way, my wife is a software engineer, so she'd be a great one. She's from Brazil, and she had zero background, and she went from zero to software engineer, and it's an amazing story. I think she'd be great for your
Oh,
podcast.
heck yeah, please. We are going to chat after this for sure. I need to have
Sure.
her.
So yeah, so I basically, the first one that I had was I was, started my own little business, and then in Brazil I started a business there. Before that, I was mostly in sales. I did like 10 different sales jobs, selling everything from cell phones to computers to jewelry to cars to everything. I sold all kinds of crap. And I think sales is like project management is a really, really important skill to have because it taught me a lot of the people skills and stuff like that.
Yeah, let's talk about those essential skills. So, technical project manager, you're the liaison between the technical and non-technical teams, and you said it yourself. It's not just the technical skill set that you need; you also need the soft skills. So, what are
Yeah.
some of the most important soft skills that you think you need to have for this role?
Yeah, one of the big things, and I'd say one of the barriers to entry of the technical project manager role is understanding the agile methodology framework that a lot of these companies use to operate in. And it's really, really not difficult, and it can be kind of intimidating. And my view is that it's intentionally intimidating and created as a barrier to keep people out because they use their own fancy words and made up, like it's just a meeting, but they call it a stand up, oh, it's just like a 2-week time period, but they call it a sprint. Like it's not that fancy, guys, but they make these words to kind of like make it seem like, oh, I'm an agile, project manager, so I know what these terms are. And I studied this in school, and really you can learn it in a couple of days, like the basics of it in a couple of days off of free tutorials on YouTube. But so the soft skills essentially would be understanding agile project management, and having the ability to lead good meetings and communicate well, take good meeting notes, have a good project plan, so good organizational skills, be able to see what needs to be done, and really just follow through to get things done. But you also have to understand that as a project manager, you're not a manager of anybody. You're nobody's boss, right? You are managing the resources of the project, but nobody is, you're not in charge of anybody. You can't tell anybody what to do. So if I need you to finish this project or to work on something and you're kind of slacking, I got to figure out a way how to get you to be motivated to do what you need to do without having any authority over you. It's called like influencing without authority. So that's one example, but really just being the kind of person that people are willing to respond to, and being a great communicator and being organized in your thoughts, and being able to motivate and inspire people around you to do their best work.
I really love the way that you put it, influencing without authority. And I think even if you did have authority, if you approach your leadership like that, that kind of makes you like what is it, servant leadership? It sounds like, that makes you the kind of person that I want to fucking put extra hours into. I want to get my stuff done, and like really, it makes me want to do my best work. If I am under a leader, or not under, but if I'm working alongside someone with that sort of attitude, definitely.
Yeah.
You mentioned taking good meeting notes. What is how do you do that? What is your strategy or your thought process for taking good meeting notes? I want to hear the details on this one, because students, it probably is how you take good class notes as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I wish I could say I was much better at it, but there are some things as a project manager that I have my weaknesses. And one of them is taking good meeting notes, because I'm always thinking, oh yeah, I'm probably going to remember this later. But one key that somebody taught to me actually when I was learning how to program that kind of helped me get in the right mindset is I would always leave notes for yourself like you're an absolute idiot. Like you're gonna forget everything. Like don't think, oh, I'm so smart, I'm gonna remember this in a few days from now. No, assume that you're an absolute idiot, and as soon as you leave the meeting, you're gonna forget everything. So overly typed notes, and there's some little tricks you can learn along the way. Like you can start to tag people in the notes so that they know they're responsible for certain things. Little subtle nudges, to get them to perform and stuff like that.
Good for
and also
group
technical
projects.
documentation is something I'm not really good at, but it's a very documentation is like a very, very important part of project management. Something that I don't like doing. It's kind of like, eating your vegetables. You just got to get through it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So making sure you write as much documentation about the project as possible is a huge value add to any organization and a big part of your responsibilities as a project manager.
What are some of the technical skills that someone should learn in order to get to this point?
So this is actually a really hot topic, and it's really, really important to understand this part too, because as a project manager, you likely are never going to actually be doing any coding. As a technical project manager, you're likely not going to be doing any kind of coding. However, you will be participating in technical conversations. So what that means is, if you're going to be talking to a technical team, so if you have no idea about the technology used for that product, then you're really not going to be able to communicate. You won't be speaking the same languages. So do you need to be able to code? No, and you'll be required to code. However, you need to be at least familiar enough with the technology in order to have technological conversations. So understanding the technologies is used is usually enough. And a lot of times, if you don't have a strong technical background, just making sure that you ask the right questions to your team. But they may get kind of, tired of having to explain things to you all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, they're like, why are you asking what what an API is? I just told you last week. And so they can get kind of frustrated if you aren't, if you can't keep up with that side of it.
I was having dinner with my partner's programming team, and I literally at dinner, like yesterday, asked, what's an API? So it's so funny that that's the example that you use.
Yeah,
I feel a little attacked here. No, I'm totally kidding. So clearly as a non-technical person, when I engage in these conversations, I like to think of it like I am a kindergartner all over again. I am in kindergarten and I am doing a vocabulary test. And this vocabulary test for people who are at a very professional level in these positions, it's super basic to them. It's probably like something that I wouldn't understand is probably like preschool level to you. But I think that's kind of what makes it fun for me as a non-technical person. And if I'm trying to engage in conversation with any industry, because we are the industry explorers and I explore industries I know nothing about. It's fun. It's fun to pretend like you're 5 years old again without a care in the world other than to make sure you've got your vocabulary right. Did we even get vocab tests in kindergarten? Maybe first grade.
Probably starting at first grade.
So obviously we're not in kindergarten. We're not in first grade. You did mention that having a college degree is going to definitely help. And we talked a lot about how the degree itself, what you major in, doesn't necessarily matter too much. You have a degree in econ and an MBA. We talked a lot about agile. For a college student, if they decide to take a gap year, maybe they want to take like a class or two just to, they don't want a full-on schedule, but maybe they want to do something on Coursera or something to fill up their time.
Yeah.
What would you recommend?
I mean, first of all, I would say don't be afraid to take a gap year because
yes, I love that advice. Sorry, I had to. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
No, it's crazy because what are you doing in that gap year? I mean, and that's the important thing too. That's the distinguishing factor here. If you are enriching your life and building life experiences, did you get to travel or did you sit on your couch the whole time? So it's all about the story that you get to tell. And the best part is that we get to tell our own stories. So when somebody asks you, hey, you have 18 months that you didn't work, what were you doing? You get to spin the story and make it however you want. And if a recruiter or a hiring manager is talking to you and they ask you, hey, why did you take 18 months off? And you say, hey, I decided to travel the world. I went to India for 18 months and I had an amazing experiences. I learned a lot about culture and now I speak the language and now I met people and I did this and that. If the hiring manager looks at you and says, you know what? Well, you should have been in a cubicle. You know what?
That's I don't want to work for that. You want to work for.
We're not on the same level. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think gap years are great. It's just about the story that you tell afterwards. And
I love that.
one quick other thing is I never thought anybody would ever care about it. I mean, but I always heard, oh yeah, you know, you can't have too big of a gap. But and most times that has always been the case until I worked for a bigger company, which is Facebook, my most recent role, and they actually had me write an explanation as to why I had a gap, you know. And
Oh,
yeah, and I
wow.
told them just that. I told them, you know, listen, I went to Brazil, started a company there. Um, you know, and I had a great experience. I learned the language. I had the opportunity to train Brazilian jiu-jitsu, you know, and compete there. And I had a great experience, and it made me a more well-rounded human being. Like, who's going to argue with that? And if they
Mm.
do, we're not on the same page, and I'll just go to the next one.
Oh gosh, absolutely. And you were also talking about all these soft skills and these communication skills. And
Yeah,
honestly, you can only read so many leadership books. You can only read so many self-help books.
yeah,
You can only watch so many motivational speakers on YouTube. Really, really, you really need that life
yeah,
experience. And not all of us are going to take a gap year and start a company, but you know, if you decide to volunteer at your local pick a cause, you know, you're building life experience.
yeah,
And what's the most annoying interview question? Tell us about yourself. All right,
yeah,
well, start with your gap year, you
yeah,
know?
exactly. Yeah,
You know, and I would even argue that you could probably put your gap year into your resume, because I think, and I would talk to a
hmm,
recruiter about this, you know, just ask someone in HR what their opinion is on this. Quote me, don't quote me, whatever. But you know, some people look at your resume chronologically, and then if they see a gap, they go, "Oh, what happened there?" You know, obviously in 2020, they're going to be like, "Yep, that gap. Everyone has that gap."
yeah. Everyone has
COVID.
the same gap.
Um, but you know, I think depending on like how you spend that gap year, especially if you take like a part-time job, or if you do some volunteer work, or even if you decide to spend your time focusing on like a certificate program or a
Yeah,
certification, all of that's very valuable, and you can absolutely put that in your resume. Like, why not?
yeah.
Why not?
And one thing I'll say too is that, you know, you got to be really self-serving, I think. And you, like I said, you're the one that gets to tell the story. So if you want to add your own flavor to your story, you know, there's probably not going to be any fact checking, you know, other than like dates of employments, you know, and stuff like that. If you know, if you want to add, and usually, by the way, if they do employment verification, they're not going to contact your previous employer, but they at Facebook, this was really interesting. They checked the dates of employment and my income going back like 5 or 6 years, like
Oh wow.
like years and years. They went back, they checked all my education, and they checked the dates of employment. And it was really invasive. I had to send them like my tax returns because I didn't have like
Mm.
W-2s from like years ago. It was crazy invasive, this background check to get a job at one of these companies. But what they didn't check was like what role I was at, you know, like the
Mhm.
names of my roles. And one piece of advice that I always give people that are looking to break into the tech industry or really any industry is a lot of times you have some leeway on the title of your last role, you know, and if you're trying to become a technical project manager or any kind of project or anything really, you have to have your LinkedIn and your resume all in alignment with that thing. So if you can change, you know, your responsibilities to look more like project manager responsibilities, or even just change the title of, you know, of a particular role, you know, to be project manager or whatever you're trying to accomplish, then, you know, you got to play with the rules sometimes, because, you know, that's what this like career industry is like. Sometimes you got to like break in any way you can, because once you're
Mhm.
in, everything's a lot easier, but getting in
Yeah.
is hard. Getting your first
Yeah.
job in tech is hard. Your first project management role is hard. But once you have it, then it's like, you know, so sometimes you got to just do what you got to do to get in there, you know, and sometimes that means playing with the truth a little bit.
Yeah, and you know,
You have to
I've
tell whatever
interviewed a
story,
lot of.
spin whatever story that you want to spin in order to be successful and happy in life. That's what you got to do.
Absolutely, I love that advice. Of all the people that I've interviewed, both on the Industry Explorers podcast and in the Industry Explorers live stream, I've noticed there's actually not a pattern or a trend. I can't think of a better word for it right now, but I've noticed that a lot of people, when it comes to their job title, it's something that it's often a really big gray area when it comes to their job and their career. Some titles are very generic and may not 100% represent like what they did in their role. Their title may be very broad and not truly represent what it was that they did,
Yeah.
or their title may have been something that was made up. I mean, I've actually, myself
Mhm.
included, and I've met quite a few people who they enter a job role and they bring their own beautiful set of skills, and then with those skills they kind of they are their own puzzle piece. They fit into the company in a way that really plays on the strength of what their skills are as well as what the company needs, and then some people make up their own titles.
Yeah, and the companies make up their own titles too. And sometimes
Yeah.
you're like, well, how the heck is this going to translate? Like for example,
Yes.
I think my first job title when I joined that company before the technician one, it's called Pulse for conversation's sake. Pulse. I think it was like what is it? Technician support or something like that. It was like
Hmm.
technician engagement. It's called technician engagement. Like, what the heck is that? How am I going to put that on a resume? Like, that's just something you made up. Like, and
Yeah.
when you were writing the resume. Now I'm stuck with that for life. No, thank you. And plus, like, my responsibilities changed so much. And I worked on so much over the year. And at a small company, you don't always get these formal role changes, although
Yeah.
responsibilities change. So you gotta, you write your own history here.
And I'll actually mention that when I have done an ATS scan on my resume, it thought I was either an engineer, nurse, or IT person. And I am none of those things. I am a stagehand. Specifically, my expertise is in rigging.
Mm.
So to say that I'm a technician, the robots think, oh, IT, but they don't realize that in entertainment, in that world, we also call certain roles technical roles, technician roles. So
Mm-hmm.
these are all like really important things to think about when you are applying for jobs. And even though if I were applying for a job in entertainment, I would say I am an ETCP certified rigger. If I were applying for a role in any industry other than entertainment, I wouldn't say ETCP. I would say certified rigger, because there are other
Mm-hmm.
types of rigging certifications. But if someone just sees certified, they're going to go, oh, there's a like a certain amount of fundamentals that and advanced concepts that she understands about rigging. Cool.
Yeah.
Check. So I really appreciate you bringing all of these things up, because they are very important, and I don't think I've touched on them very much on this show. So,
That ATS
moving
is something
on.
else, isn't it, though?
Pardon?
That ATS is something else, isn't it, though?
Oh, oh man,
It's like,
that's
it's
for a
just,
whole other live stream.
that's a whole other like book. That's a whole other like, like hour and
Yeah.
a half podcast where we just get into the ATS,
Oh yeah.
because
Oh,
that's a
totally.
whole weird concept there. It's
Definitely.
throwing people out of the pool just because they they don't match your AI's matching whatever. Anyway.
Yep. Yep. So what certificate? So once you are a project manager, whether you're in operations or you are a technical project manager, do you recommend any certificates or certifications for people at that professional level to attain?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different certifications, and the reasons why certifications are kind of, I wouldn't even call them important, but because they're talked about a lot in the project management space, is because there is no formal way to assess your skills. There's no formal skill assessment like a programming challenge or a coding challenge in other industries. They basically uh, these certifications can help add legitimacy to your to your skill set. And some of the more common ones are PMP. I don't recommend these, by the way. They're just these that exist. Okay, and I'll go into which ones I may recommend in a moment. But there's like PMP. There's a certified Scrum Master. There's Agile Coach. There's a bunch of different ones. They're all very expensive. They're all very abstract and pie in the sky. The one that I do recommend that anyone interested in looking into getting into project management checks out is the Google one, the Google Coursera one. It's you can check it out on grow.google.com, and it's a professional certificate from Google on project management, and they touch on some of these agile project management concepts. And it's very, very low cost. It's like $29 per month, so you can finish it in 1 to 2 months. And it has the legitimacy of the Google name, whereas some of these other ones are like $800 each. And what I can say is that I've worked alongside some people that have these more expensive PMP, Scrum Master, other types of certifications, and I can tell you that those certifications do not translate into practical project management ability. So just because somebody has it doesn't mean that they're going to be a great project manager. Just because someone doesn't have it doesn't mean that they can't be very, very successful and practical in a project management space as well.
Yeah, very, very critical. But
they
certifications, they certainly help build your authority and credibility.
That's the main thing, right? If you're trying to break into the industry and you have zero experience whatsoever, and you're trying to show somebody that you have some kind of experience, having a certification may be worthwhile in order to help you get your foot in the door. And it's unfortunate, but if you have zero other experience, how else is someone going to understand that you would be successful in their current role? So they may be necessary if you're trying to get your first role, and they could be very helpful.
We had a question that came in from Roxanne. She asked, regarding soft skills, do you have a recommendation on specific books or topics to look into?
Ooh, that's a good one. I can't. There are a couple things that I liked. So there's a book by Jocko Willink. Jocko Willink, if you guys know who Jocko is.
Yes, yes. Extreme ownership and the dichotomy of leadership and leadership strategies.
Oh yeah, you know all. You got them.
I also highly recommend those books. I was thinking that, and then I was like, no, I don't want to chime in with that. I want to see what he says. But man, we are same shirt, same book recommendations.
Oh yeah. I was in the military before college. I was in the military, and I was an officer and in the National Guard. So I learned a lot of my leadership skills there, and I learned a lot about what I didn't want to be like, And so when I read Extreme Ownership, it kind of resonated a lot with that. And so, the biggest thing is you are a servant leader, right? You have to, in the military, the leaders eat last, for example. The first one's in the door, the last one's to leave, that kind of thing. So, that's probably, but most of what I learned about leadership, I learned from in the military and observing leaders and understanding who I wanted to be like and who I didn't want to be like.
If there are people on your team who, for whatever reason, maybe they're struggling with morale, maybe they've got something personal going on, and it's kind of that, maybe ill attitude. I don't want to say attitude, that sounds so harsh, but maybe whatever they're going through is starting to trickle throughout the rest of the team. How do you handle a situation like that?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll do is I try to be as empathetic as possible, right? And listen to the person to understand what's going on. Because a lot of times, in my life as a subordinate, I got talked to a lot, right? Someone's always telling me what to do. But very, very rarely would people take a moment to listen. And when I realized people weren't listening, then I kind of stopped participating a lot of times. So one of the biggest things is just being a good listener and understanding why they're upset. And if they're upset about something that, and the other thing is too, is if you can't change somebody and someone doesn't want to be there, figure out a way to if as a project manager, you can't do this, but if another leader, you can kind of fire quickly. If someone doesn't want to be there, let them get on their way. But dealing with different attitudes and personalities is a big part of project manager. But I always like to, show them that I'm willing to work harder than them. A lot of times, if they see that you're willing to work harder than if you're willing to be the hardest worker on the team, then people just feel bad and start to work as well. But that's kind of what I would say.
Gotcha. Any other book recommendations before we move on to our next topic?
Book recommendations. I mean, one that I got a bunch. One that really got me recently was oh shoot, I'm spacing on the name. David Goggins, the name of the book.
Can't Hurt Me.
Can't Hurt Me. Yeah, if you haven't read Can't Hurt Me, just take a few moments to read Can't Hurt Me. I mean, not a few moments.
That is
I
a
read
good one.
the audiobook. It was awesome. And that one's a good one on mentality. Yeah, I'm not really sure if I think applicable to business. I love a lot of autobiographies. I love like the like the rags to riches type stories. Ronda Rousey's and autobiography was awesome. Elon Musk's biography was great. I like Shoe Dog. That's a really great book on business. If you feel like learning about business, Shoe Dog.
It's called Shoe Dog.
Yeah, it's a story of Nike by Phil Knight.
Oh, cool.
Really
amazing. That sounds very intriguing, actually.
Yeah. I listen to tons of non-fiction stuff, probably more than I should. But yeah.
So moving on to conferences and trade shows, are there any that you like have to go to every year? Do you go to trade shows? Because you talked about startups, right? You very much have an entrepreneurial spirit. You've started your own company, both in the United States and in Brazil, and you've been a part of a startup and all these things. So are there any conferences or trade shows that you go to, or is this like what you're involved in is just too broad?
No, I mean, not for project management that I know of. The conferences and trade shows that I like to attend are like tech related.
Yeah.
For example, there's a really, really awesome Python meetup that I used to go to in the Bay Area. It was called I can't remember what it's called, like Pi Bay or something like that. And they would just meet once a month, and it was so awesome. And it was when I was trying to learn about tech on my own. So I was in this non-technical role trying to transition. I just knew that like my skills weren't specific and technical enough to have like a solid career path. And if I wanted to be valued, then I need to get some kind of concrete hard skills. And so I started learning Python and programming on my own. And I would go to these conferences, weekly, monthly conferences. They'd have pizza. They'd do a quick little talk. They'd have some like flash lightning talks where people would get up for 5 minutes to talk about an interesting topic. Meet interesting people that are trying to learn Python and stuff as well. And those were really, really fun things. So I found that on Meetup, I think. So if you have any, local meetups where you can learn about really anything you're interested in, then I would recommend just go check it out, especially if you're in that phase where you're trying to level up your skills or you're trying to break into a new industry.
I love it. Great advice. What does work-life integration look like for you? And I don't say work-life balance because I don't think it's always going to be perfectly balanced. That's why I say integration. So what does it look like for you personally?
Yeah, that's a hard one, because for me personally, I am trying to transition out of the corporate world because, for various reasons, I'm sure you can imagine, I'm trying to, build things for myself. And, but in a corporate setting, work-life integration, I think you have to value your own, put your own interests first, because a lot of times a company, they don't care about
a company is going to put their interests first.
They're going to put their interests first too. When I was working at this company,
you have to be your own advocate.
Yeah, absolutely. When I was working at that company, Pulse, there was one day when the investment money kind of dried up. They let go of 50 people, getting everybody on a conference call and saying, thanks for being part of the team, but your service is no longer needed. So, it's the second their interests are not aligned with yours, you're gone. And so that's why it's so important that you put yourself first. And so, that motivation of working hard, a lot of times for me came from being a part of a team that I wanted to be a part of, right? So you're in meetings with people, they depend on you, you depend on them, and working hard to create, interesting and good products. So one is make sure you put your own interests first. Secondly, make sure that you're working with a team or on a project that makes you want to be involved with it. But yeah, it's so much different these days with the working from home, right? Before,
Right.
you had to spend an hour and a half in traffic each way, sit in the office for 8 or 9 hours. You get home and it's like 7:30, time for bed. Dinner in
Yeah, you're
bed, and it's
definitely based out
really
of
hard to
California.
follow.
Hour and a half.
Oh my gosh. And in San Francisco, it was just crazy. It was literally an hour and a half each way. I got a motorcycle and eventually cut it down to 30 minutes, but it was
Hmm.
still, it's very rough, it's very
Yeah.
rough. And a lot of people have to go through that really like difficult commute, going to a job that they're not thrilled about, having to act like they love it. And then,
Hmm.
getting to go home just enough time for dinner and sleep, and then turn around and do the same thing the next day.
How do you know that you are out of balance with like your health in either a physical way, a mental way, a spiritual way, emotional way, or with regards to your relationships? How do you recognize when something is out of balance or out of alignment in your life? What are some of the signs for you personally? This is very
Yeah.
personal.
I think you have to go by how you feel, because some people just love to work hard and they get
Hmm.
their ego from that. I think that's great. Like
Yeah.
if you love it, then you're winning. In a sense, you're winning because you're doing something that you love. You're busting your butts, and you're working really hard doing something, and you love it. But that can really really quickly become something that you can't control anymore. So,
Hmm.
I think you just have to be mindful of how you're feeling and being really like in tune with, am I enjoying this? Am I waking up to do something that I enjoy doing?
Yeah.
If this was the last week of my life, this last day of my life, would I want to be spending it with these people working on this project? And if the answer to that is no, too many days in a row, then you have to take a look at yourself and decide if you need to make a change. You're not
Yeah.
always going to be able to choose exactly where you want to be, who you want to be, but a lot of times, like if there's a specific goal in mind, like, look, I know that if I stick with this for 6 months, then I'll have the capital I need in order to go do this, or I will have enough experience that I can go do this. So sometimes if it's something you got to put up with a short period of time, but if you don't see
Hmm.
an end in sight, like this company, I'm planning on being here for the next 20 years, but I don't like it, I hate it. Well, then, you need to make a change. And the hard
Yeah.
part too, a lot of times, is the change that when you're not like really, really unhappy with something, then it can be hard to make a change. Because if you're just moderately uncomfortable, then you can kind of put up with it for 2 more weeks to get your next paycheck, or just 2 more weeks to my next paycheck. It's like that's the motivation to keep going. But
Hmm.
sometimes, if that's like the worst, because you will never be motivated enough to make a big change. And sometimes to make a big change, you need to be miserable and unhappy, and that's what's going to spark that in you.
Yeah, and if you're not a workaholic and you're not like just you live for your career, I think if that's not you, you're not winning. What I gather from what you said, Alistair, is what really matters is that you find enjoyment in life. As
Yeah,
long as there's enjoyment there, and if that means working so many hours and then getting to spend time with your kids or with your dog or having enough vacation time to travel, like whatever gives you fulfillment and enjoyment. And then if it's just plugging away at your career constantly and always being surrounded by your team, then it just what matters is that you are fulfilled and that there's enjoyment in life.
yeah,
So yeah, and you're right. There when the answer for you is no, I'm not feeling enjoyment every day. If you have so many days consecutively where the answer to those types of questions are no, you certainly need to pause and do some soul searching and figure out how you're going to change your situation and as you said, not get too complacent. Oh, two
yeah,
more weeks, 2 more weeks, 2 more weeks. So I think your advice is absolutely wonderful. This has been a very enjoyable live stream. I'm having a wonderful time. I want to invite our audience members to ask any last minute questions that they may have for you. And in the meantime, while they're typing away, do you have any last minute industry insights for our viewers? I know, Pandora's box.
Sure. I got a really good one I'd like to share with people.
Yes.
I got a really good one that I like to tell people. So it's really like cool that I talk about Facebook and working at Google. My wife worked at Google, I worked at Facebook, and people get really excited when we talk about those. But I want to share a little secret about that. And a lot of times, in fact, one of the so a lot of people, and up to like 40% of the workforce at companies like Facebook and Google actually don't work directly for that company. They're third-party contractors, okay? And these third-party contractor positions are a really great way to get your foot in the door, because the hiring requirements are much, much lower typically, because they're not going to give you stock options. You don't get the same benefits, and they're short-term contracts. They just need a developer, or they need a project manager, or they need somebody for a few months. And so, it's easier to get your foot in the door. But once you have that on your resume, like I have that on my resume now, I'm constantly being approached by recruiters saying, hey, you have this experience. I think you'd be great for Google, for DoorDash. I get hit up all the time by different recruiters, which is really awesome. And it's all thanks to having that, that short contract experience at a big tech firm. And so when you think about working for a company like Facebook and Google, don't necessarily think about working for them. There are a lot of third-party contracting companies, and you kind of got to do some research on those and find them. But they're great experiences, a great way to gain experience, and easier way to get your foot in the door.
I don't think I could have asked for a better nugget of knowledge than what you dropped just now. Like, honestly, I want every single student who's stressing about their future to hear what you just said.
Yeah.
And they will if they follow me on Industry Explorers.
Yes.
So, Alister, thank you so much for being a guest on our show.
Of course.
Viewers, if you want to follow Alister, he is on TikTok and he's on Instagram. On TikTok, he is at alister.shirazi. Did I say that right?
You got it, yeah.
Oh, awesome. And then on Instagram, he is at Alister_conquers. Please click that subscribe button if you want to see more industries that we explore and talk to industry experts and find all these interesting nuggets of knowledge and information and industry insights for you. So, without further ado, Industry Explorers, thank you guys for joining us on this live stream. My name is Siobhan Colleen. I'll see you on our next adventure. Take care. Hit that subscribe button. Bye.